Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenny Montgomery. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about AI, the Boo Bash, and a new book called The Girl from the Red Rose Motel, drawn from one teacher's real-world experience with homeless students. It's a concern the Richmond County Board of Education has been discussing. They're trying to find solutions to the growing homeless student population. According to the Salvation Army, the Center of Hope shelter houses roughly 17 children a night. 8 of those are school age. The goal is to provide a home and help them succeed in school.
We had about 17, averaged about 17 children a night. Of that, about 8 are school aged, and then so the other 8 or 9 would have been 4 and under.
Leaders agreeing that they need to make sure those young people have a home and a chance to succeed in school. And someone who has seen what it's like for homeless children in the classroom is with me today. Susan Zurenda's new book, let me hold it up for you, The Girl from the Red Rose Motel, was inspired from situations she observed in her 30-year teaching career. Susan Zurenda, thank you for being here with me today.
Jenny, thank you so much for having me on. Jenny.
Well, and actually the key here is that she is on here with me because we did talk to Susan once before during the COVID year when we did a Zoom. I believe it was the COVID year, but we Zoomed. We did a Zoom interview because your first book was Bells for Eli.
Correct.
And so now The Girl from the Red Rose Motel. I was so impressed because your background, you were an English teacher in community college and then also in a high school setting.
Correct.
And it was because of being a teacher, you became so much more aware of students who were, you know, from different backgrounds.
Correct.
You had polar extremes.
I did. My last 10 years of teaching were in the high school in the town where I live, Spartanburg High School. And I don't know really what the right word to use is, but I think of it as having had a kind of bipolar teaching life because I taught 4 classes of the brightest, probably most affluent, and where education was valued the most, AP classes,
yes.
12th grade AP English. And then I had a 5th class called Reading Strategies, and those were the kids whose reading and writing levels were so far behind they could not pass the exit exam to graduate in South Carolina. And I was charged with the responsibility of doing what we could do to get their levels up high enough to pass the exit exam. So that was part of the inspiration for the characters of Sterling Lovell, who is this bright, arrogant, affluent young man who's in Angela Wilmore's English class, and then Hazel Smalls, who is in one of Angela's general English classes and who is bright but impoverished and lives in the Red Rose Motel.
Right. You know, so many things that we don't think about, the things that we take for granted, like transportation.
Exactly.
You know, it was a clue to the teacher because she came so early to school that she was on a different bus route.
Right, and that is very true that often the young people who live in motels, they do have separate bus routes and nobody rides on those buses.
And I guess I would think that part of what you're doing as a teacher, you learn, guidance counselors of course would know, you know, the different students. But I think part of what you're doing too is trying to make sure that the child doesn't feel like they stick out that much.
That's right. And children are young people are amazingly adept at hiding their poverty. And it's kind of through the back door sometimes that you find out. I don't know really definitively how many young people I might have taught who were sheltered in motels, but the one I know of was a young man, very bright, very computer savvy. I am not, and he stayed after school one day to help me with the computer. And I just figured, I mean, he's this bright kid, and I figured he's got his car, he'll drive home. And when it was over, he said, "I'm going to need a ride home." Well, you're not supposed to take kids home in your personal vehicle, but I did.
Yeah.
And we went out to the interstate, and pulled up in front of a motel, and it wasn't the worst motel in town, but it wasn't all that swoofed either.
Right.
And I said, Malika, I cannot leave you here. And he said, yeah, you can. This is where I live. And that was the first, you know, my first understanding that this situation exists. And of course, I did learn a lot more from a now retired guidance counselor who started a nonprofit in my hometown to assist people living in motels.
Was that the Crock-Pot?
No, that's another.
Okay.
A friend of mine has a crock-pot mission, and that's in the novel. She does provide crock-pots to families because they don't have a kitchen to try to help them have a healthy meal. But the other organization is a nonprofit that's been in place for years now. In Spartanburg, it's called CAST, Care, Accept, Share, Teach, and it benefits, tries to help families raise deposits to get out or buy shoes for the kids or send them to summer camp, that kind of thing.
Well, it's a very, you know, it's a fun book to read. It's a great little storyline in the plot that's coming along. Did your characters, were they just totally made up, or did you draw on situations that you knew from kids?
That's a good question. There are two incidents in the novel that are based on, you know, real incidents in my teaching life. One is the chapter early on that catapults the plot into action when Sterling Lovell, who is an amalgam of 8 boys I taught one year in AP English, they call themselves the Crazy Eights.
Yeah.
I referred to them as the Hateful Eightful. They had banded together in middle school and had been terrorizing their classrooms ever since. Nobody had ever brought them to task, I think because they were so smart. And they were going to go to great schools and the parents were influential. And one day, 3 of those in my class really usurped the lesson, and I sent them to in-school suspension. So Sterling was the first character who emerged, and I wanted to see how he might come to have a new map of the world in his head and call on the empathy which is inside of him, and introduced him to Hazel, who has been sent to ISS.
The book, we don't want to give away any of the plot. I was surprised by the ending, and I loved that I was surprised by the ending.
It is an unusual ending.
Yes, it was. The other thing that I really like is when you have had your book readings, one of the focuses that you try to come across is that there is this need. Hundreds of thousands of children in our country are living in motels.
They are. You know, we tend to think that people who live in rundown motels are maybe drug addicts or prostitutes or, you know, but that's not the whole picture at all. There are a lot of families that live in rundown motels, and there are all kind of general reasons: poor credit, eviction. Landlords don't want to rent to people who have been evicted. Affordable housing is a tremendous thing. Job loss. It goes on and on. And just one quick statistic. This is just pulling one night in January of 2022. There were, I think, 348,500 something children, young people under the age of 18 living in rundown motels, and that's just a lot of young people.
I really love how your book brings attention to this, and it will help you feel an empathy that you might have not had before, and it may make you question things that you see about young people walking on the streets.
I hope so.
And it will be very eye-opening for you. You can buy the book here in Augusta at the Book Tavern down on Broad Street, or you can buy it at Barnes & Noble or any of your online booksellers that you like. Susan Zurenda, thank you so much for being here with us, and good luck with The Girl from the Red Rose Motel. When we come back, a discussion about artificial intelligence and its implications in the classroom. Don't go away.